North Country Ballroom, Part 2. The ball, which was actually a spaghetti dinner and silent auction organized by the local Lions Club, was to be held at the local town hall, a WPA-era wooden building sheathed with white clapboard siding and sporting forest green trim. The main hall was big enough to seat about 300 people. The hardwood floor decorated with worn paint lines of black and red, indicating its long-standing intermittent use as a community basketball court. Off in one corner was a small but generally adequate community kitchen area, a tiny stage, complete with old brown velvet curtains, and a pair of ancient Electrolux loudspeakers mounted above it, graced the center of the far end of the building. Off to the left were the double doors for a storage room for the army of cold steel folding chairs and collapsible tables, which were kept for community dinners, wedding receptions, and the like. An old cable upright piano took up residence there also. When Elmer arrived, most of the local Lions Club members were busy with preparations for the dinner, covering the tables with flimsy white plastic tablecloths, laying out silverware, coffee, cups, and plates. Margie Swanson, Jumper's wife, who was locally renowned as something of a decorating genius, was putting the centerpieces on each of the tables. The centerpieces, donated by Dwayne's Sharpening Service, were half-size cardboard cutouts of various models of Husqvarna chainsaws. They were printed on both sides of the cardboard and were originally meant to hang in sets from a saw dealer's ceiling as some sort of chainsaw mobile. But upon seeing them, when she stopped by Dwayne's to pick up Elmer's saw as a favor, which had been substantially dulled by its encounter with his Levi's zipper, Margie recognized their decorating potential. Dwayne said he could always get more of them from the Husky rep and was content to part with them in exchange for a promise of one of Margie's famous rhubarb prune pies come spring. So Margie brought the cardboard cutouts home and had Jumper rig up 12 little tabletop stands for them out of scrap slab wood. Now there they were, heat glued onto pine bark bases and looking pretty festive at that. Beneath each little chainsaw, Margie had spread out an aesthetically pleasing collection of autumn leaves, mostly red and yellow maple. Beneath the bar of each of the chainsaws, she had placed a lone acorn. Seeing this, Elmer immediately got the joke, though he thought it would have been a little bit more realistic if they had at least used walnuts. Still, knowing the whole event was put together by volunteers and on a pretty tight budget, he swallowed his pride and, catching Margie's eye, smiled, pointed at the centerpieces, and said, "Pretty nice, Marge." In the area just below the stage, a table had been set up with a collection of silent auction items, all donated by local businesses, Lions Club members, or friends of Elmer. Putsy Hillman had donated his old electric weed trimmer, having pretty much given up on the finer parts of lawn care ever since he had removed his 2 toes with the chainsaw. Bowser Gatormson had donated an oil painting that he bought at a garage sale, and which he claimed was fairly likely blue period work by Picasso. But since it was Bowser saying so, we were all pretty much sure that that was a load of bullshit. Nonetheless, even though it was probably not a Picasso, it was one of the nicest paintings of cats playing cribbage that any of us had ever seen, and it was universally agreed that an outstanding work of art such as this would go high. Elmer's brother Donnie donated the sweater vest which his former fiancée Lorraine had knitted for him years ago, but which he never wore on account it was being made out of various pastel shades of Angora yarn, and as Donnie so eloquently put it, "I don't have no problem with those that do, but I don't swing that way." When Lorraine dumped him for a fellow counselor that she met at 4-H camp the summer after high school graduation, Donnie had no incentive to even consider wearing that sweater vest. Buster Tabell, who sold insurance for a living but dabbled in taxidermy, donated an outstanding frozen tableau composition consisting of 2 red squirrels, one in black boxer's trunks and the other in white, both equipped with red boxing gloves, duking it out each other against the ropes of a miniature fighting ring. The entire piece was meticulously crafted right down to the tiny brass bell on the side of the ring, a genuine canvas deck, and miniature stools and spit pails in opposite corners of the ring. A beautifully hand-lettered placard on one side said, "Chip versus Dale" by Roger Tabell. Measuring about 18 inches square, the tableau was a piece that any boxing squirrel collector would have been proud to own. When asked how he could part with such a fantastic object to art, Buster said, "I don't know if it's the smell of the squirrels or what, but it drives my dog Tippy completely insane, and I mean completely. When I finished it, I put it on display for a little while in the living room, and Tippy absolutely would not leave the house as long as it was there. He just stood and barked at it until he was completely hoarse. I finally put it up in a corner cupboard, figuring there'd be an end to it, but when I came back later, Tippy had chewed the corner off the cabinet door in an attempt to get up at it. Marlene was so damn mad that she said I either got rid of the squirrels or she was leaving. I thought pretty hard about her offer, but remembered how depressed Tippy gets whenever Marlene's gone, so I decided I'd better to give up Chip and Dale. Reverend Bill, the chain-smoking pastor from Calvary Independent Bible Church, had donated 3 free marriage counseling sessions, but since he had just closed the book on his 4th unsuccessful marriage, most people pretty much figured that he was using those free sessions as a way to meet potentially available local women. Bill had assumed the leadership of Calvary after the death of his father, Ragnar Dillman, a self-proclaimed man of God, founder of Calvary Independent, and a notorious womanizer. Famous for his good looks, hellfire and brimstone sermons, and his shockingly earthy manner of speaking. For the miniskirt is Satan's way to turn the thoughts of men from paradise to pussy. Ragnar was disparagingly referred to by local Lutherans and Catholics alike as Saint Ragnar the Rude. Reverend Bill, by contrast, was an extraordinarily accepting and open-minded individual, to the point of not only willingly performing the area's first non-legal same-sex marriage ceremonies, but even professing to be perfectly willing to bless the union of interspecies couples, provided they appeared to be in a mutually committed, relatively monogamous relationship. Bill's complete unwillingness in any way to judge or vilify the beliefs or actions of others had won him the sincere love and respect of the majority of Porter's Hills residents, while cultivating the disdain and contempt of a select few. Reverend Bill's first ex, who after their divorce went to Thailand and came back as Todd, donated an entire set of Encyclopedia Britannica from the late 80s, which, while a bit dated, were in almost mint condition and would have looked really nice in the library collection of any discriminating reader who wasn't at all interested in anything after the Reagan era. While very few would imagine that a backwoods rural area could be relatively acquiescent when confronted with the notion of someone leaving town as Tammy and coming back as Todd, this little corner of northern Wisconsin apparently was just such a place. The guys at the hardware store, Brad and Wally, who were notoriously frugal, had contributed a pair of matching his and hers shag carpet rakes, one with a blue handle and one with a pink handle. The business end of the rake was made out of plastic, but if you had real sandy soil, which no one in Porter's Hill had, they would have worked great for smoothing out a seed bed or perhaps for leveling cat litter in an oversized kitty box. Since it had been quite some time since shag carpet was all the rage, these tools were clearly left over from the days when Einar Mortensen still owned the hardware. He had sold it to Brad and Wally in 2003 after 45 years in the business. Although it was just a small town hardware store, for years it was the only one within miles. Through hard work, shrewd business sense, and the good fortune to have chosen a few exceedingly productive investments, Einar had managed to set aside a handsome nest egg for retirement. But he failed to get a chance to enjoy any of it. The day after he signed the store over to Brad and Wally, a fierce thunderstorm hit town. He received a late-night call from his widowed sister, Lily, who lived out by the Hanson farm, begging him to please drive out and check on why her power was out. He headed out there with a flashlight and, arriving at Lily's, felt the need to relieve himself. He looked up at the new moon appearing from behind the last of the rain clouds, and as he opened his zipper and relaxed a bit, the next thing he knew, he could see himself lying on the ground as he rose up over the willow tree and drifted up toward the moonlight. In the distance, he thought he heard Lily say, "Einar, are you out there? Einar?" But then all was silence and peace and bliss. Though from time to time there was discussion in town as to whether or not Brad and Wally were a couple, or just good friends and housemates, no one really much seemed to care, so long as they opened the hardware by 8 a.m. and kept it open at least 6 days a week, just as Einar had always done. One of the more practical offerings at the auction table was a gift certificate for a free sharpening of your choice, either for an entire set of steak knives, up to 12 pieces, or for sharpening and balancing a standard set of fondue skewers, although I wasn't real sure what exactly would need to be balanced on a fondue skewer. Naturally, Dwayne had graciously donated that item. Thanks for listening.